There's a quiet fear most of us carry about money, the fear that we've misunderstood it our entire lives, that maybe financial freedom was never about earning more, but about thinking differently. When I picked up The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins, I didn't expect it to challenge me this deeply. I thought I was reading a book about investing. What I found instead was a roadmap to financial independence and a new way of seeing freedom. I'll admit, I came into The Simple Path to Wealth with a bit of skepticism. I had heard about the FIRE movement. I'd seen people talk about index fund investing, VTSAX, the 4% rule, and something called FU money. It all sounded technical, almost like a club you needed permission to join. I assumed J.L. Collins would dive into complicated strategies or insider Wall Street language. But from the very beginning, Collins disarmed me. He explains that the book began as a series of letters to his daughter, advice he wanted her to have about money, stock market investing, and building a life rooted in financial independence. That framing changed everything for me. This wasn't about beating the market. It wasn't about financial engineering. It was about clarity. What surprised me most was how quickly Collins dismantles the myth that building wealth requires complexity. He argues, calmly, almost stubbornly, that the path to financial freedom is simple by design. Spend less than you earn, avoid debt, invest consistently in low-cost index funds, let time do the heavy lifting. The finance industry thrives on making this sound complicated. Collins insists it isn't. And somewhere around the first few chapters, I felt something shift. I realized this wasn't a book about getting rich. It was a book about reclaiming control. The core philosophy Collins returns to again and again is disarmingly simple. Spend less than you earn, invest the difference, and avoid debt. On paper, that sounds obvious. But reading it through his lens made me confront how often I've violated those principles in small, socially acceptable ways. What really struck me was his concept of FU money. It's easy to laugh at the name, but the idea behind it moved me more than I expected. FU money isn't about arrogance, it's about autonomy. It's about having enough financial cushion that you are never completely trapped. You can walk away from a toxic job. You can say no without fear. You can make decisions based on alignment instead of desperation. I realized how many choices in my life had been shaped by financial anxiety. Collins reframed money not as a scorecard, but as insulation, as protection for your time and dignity. That perspective stayed with me. Then came his unapologetic endorsement of VTSAX, Vanguard's total stock market index fund, and his broader case for low-cost index funds. Before reading this book, I thought serious investors built elaborate portfolios. Collins argues the opposite. He lays out the data showing that most actively managed funds fail to outperform simple index funds over the long term, especially once fees are factored in. That clarity felt liberating. He explains stock market investing in a way that removed the drama. The market will crash, it will dip, it will terrify people. But those dips are not threats. They are opportunities. If you're still accumulating wealth, crashes are essentially stocks going on sale. The only real danger is panic selling. That reframe genuinely changed how I view volatility. Instead of seeing risk as something to avoid, I began seeing it as the engine of long-term growth. When Collins breaks down the 4% rule, it was the first time early retirement stopped feeling abstract. The idea that you can calculate your financial independence number, multiply your annual expenses by 25, and actually plot a destination gave the entire journey shape. It wasn't a fantasy anymore. It was math. He also doesn't romanticize the process. Collins is blunt about debt. He explains why debt isn't just a financial drag. It's psychological weight. It narrows your options. It quietly dictates your tolerance for things you shouldn't tolerate. Eliminating debt isn't just about balance sheets. It's about reclaiming agency. One of the sections that impacted me most was his distinction between accumulation and preservation. Building wealth requires one mindset. Living off it requires another. Many finance books ignore this transition entirely. Collins walks through both phases with the same calm pragmatism. That completeness made the system feel sustainable, not just aspirational. Throughout everything, he keeps returning to one quiet truth. Wealth isn't about excess, it's about enough. Enough to stop trading your time out of fear. Enough to choose work because it's meaningful. Enough to build wealth the simple way and let it support your life, not consume it. By the time I finished The Simple Path to Wealth, I didn't feel hyped. I felt steady. What this book changed for me wasn't just how I invest. It was how I interpret everyday decisions. The subscription I don't need. The lifestyle inflation that sneaks in after a raise. The way avoiding my account balance feels easier than confronting it. Collins doesn't shame you for those habits. He simply hands you a framework that makes them easier to correct. And what I find most hopeful is this. This path is accessible. It doesn't require genius. It requires consistency. It doesn't require luck. It requires time. If someone commits to spending less than they earn, avoiding unnecessary debt, investing in low-cost index funds like VTSAX, and trusting the long arc of the stock market, their life 5, 10, 20 years from now will look radically different. Not because they guessed right, because they stayed the course. Financial independence isn't about escaping work. It's about escaping fear. It's about waking up and knowing your choices aren't dictated by bills, debt, or panic. Collins gave me a way to think about money that feels calmer, cleaner, and more aligned with the kind of life I want to build. And that shift, from anxiety to clarity, might be the most valuable return of all. Like and subscribe for more book breakdowns and mindset insights. This is Well Read Club, where we turn powerful books into practical life shifts.